Although you will be required to recall the scenes when you take the exam, the good news is that you need to recall only one or two details about each one of the scenes in terms of the musical techniques that are employed within them. As we examine these details, we'll also take a look at the dramatic events of each of these scenes, and it will help to firm up what you already know about the three main characters in this work. So let's get started. Take a look at the libretto for Act 3, Scene 3 of this opera, and you will see that it takes place in a tavern. Wezzock has just murdered Marie. He's come back into town, and the first place he goes to is this tavern. Berg sets the scene by using an out-of-tune piano. The same sort of thing that a Hollywood film director might do to set the scene in a movie set in the late 19th or the early 20th century in some saloon somewhere in the American West. I think the Berg opera came first. When Wezzock arrives at the tavern, he is in a very foul mood indeed. He begins by cursing everyone present, telling them that the devil will get them in the end. He gulps down a glass of wine, and he breaks into a song about three horsemen riding along the Rhine, about wine, about beer, about the innkeeper's daughter, and mercifully he stops there. He notices Margaret, a friend of Marie's, who works as a serving maid in the tavern, and he invites her to dance, and his invitation to the dance is probably the rudest one in operatic history. He says, "Damn it, come Margaret." Then they dance what is surely the shortest dance in operatic history, probably 3.5 seconds or so, and then they sit down. His mood suddenly changes. He observes that she is hot. I believe he means this in terms of temperature. And he makes the macabre observation that soon she too will be cold. He's recalling his having killed Marie. And suddenly his mood shifts again, and he very sweetly asks Marie if she could sing a song for him. And she obliges him. In doing so, she performs a little song, a sentimental number about the life of a serving girl, lamenting where she lives, lamenting the fact that serving girls like her don't get to wear long dresses and pointed shoes. Wezzock is suddenly back to his usual self, and he tells her that she can go to hell just as easily with or without shoes, and then he tells us that he feels like fighting. Margaret pays no attention whatsoever to him, and she notices that he has blood on his hand, and she begins interrogating him about it. He denies that there's blood there. Eventually he admits that there is blood on his hand, and he says that he thinks that he cut himself. She wonders how it got up onto his elbow, and he said, "Oh, I wiped my hand there." And someone else comes along and observes that he's wiped his right hand on his right elbow. There's something wrong with that. Wezzock thinks he's going to be caught in a lie, and so he gets out of there as quickly as he can. Now, while all of this is going on, Berg is hard at work unifying this scene right from beginning to end. Indeed, he does so by presenting an isorhythm over and again. You all know what an isorhythm is. We encountered it in the first unit of this course. It is a repeated rhythmic pattern, and you hear it in the prelude to this scene. The prelude to this scene, as you will soon see, consists of two very loud, ugly notes, followed by a short rhythmic pattern, and is presented twice for you before the scene begins. It goes like this: bum, bum, ba, bum, bum, ba, ba, bum. When the scene opens, you hear the isorhythm again in the out-of-tune piano at the beginning. Bum, bum, ba, bum, bum, ba, ba, bum. You hear the very same pattern and the very same music played by the piano for the dance. You also hear it in each one of the lines of the song that Margaret sings. The first line is bom, bom, ba, bom, bom, ba, ba, bom. And you hear it again when she interrogates him about the blood on his hands. Aber was hast du an der Hand? And you hear it numerous other times as well, both before and after this, and you hear it sounded one final time by percussion instruments at the very end of the scene. Simply remember these two details about Act 3, Scene 3. First of all, that the scene is set by an out-of-tune piano, and that it is unified by an isorhythm. The next scene, Act 3, Scene 4, is the dramatic climax of the opera. Please take a look at the libretto for this scene. Wozzock has returned to the pond in the woods, near which he has murdered Marie, and he sets about finding the knife that he used to kill her. He's killed her by having cut her throat. Now, as he's looking for the knife at the very beginning of the scene, he imagines that there's some movement around there. He tells us that he's afraid, but then he realizes that everything is absolutely still. And then suddenly he imagines that he hears a voice calling him a murderer. He thinks about it for a second, and then he realizes it's his own mind that's playing tricks on him. He then comes upon Marie's body, and he makes a macabre observation about the wound on her neck, likening it to a necklace that she's earned in payment for her sins. Like the earrings that she's wearing, she received those earrings as a gift from her lover, the drum major, who was also one of the abusers of Wezzock. He returns to the business of finding the knife, and when he retrieves it, he throws it into the pond. After he's done so, he looks up at the sky and he sees the moon, and he imagines that the moon has been watching him, and that the moon, in fact, will betray him and will tell the world exactly where the knife is. Realizing that the knife is too close to the edge of the pond, it might be found when people are swimming or fishing in it, he tries to find it, but he realizes that he can't do so. He notices, though, that he has blood on him, and he sets about washing the blood off his hands. And as he does so, he imagines that the water is turning into blood. He walks farther and farther into the pond, and eventually he drowns. And as he is dying, you hear the voices of two of his tormentors, the captain and the doctor, in the background. In fact, that is exactly what you should be listening for in this scene, the various types of vocal delivery. This is a typical mad scene in an opera, and here the insanity of the character, Wozzock, is expressed eloquently in the type of vocal delivery that he uses for most of this scene. That is Sprechstimme, that type of vocal delivery that's somewhere between speech and song. He also sings a little bit as well, but primarily it is Sprechstimme. In contrast to this, we have the voices of his tormentors, who are simply speaking their parts. And here, Berg has achieved a wonderful separation between the two by using a certain type of vocal delivery for his tormentors and reserving the other two used throughout the opera for Wozzock himself. Notice how effectively Berg uses these types of vocal delivery, and this is in fact what I want you to remember about this scene, that it uses all three types of vocal delivery.